substituted, because that I can see is becoming much more of a disease in football than diving. It's the time wasting, the gamesmanship that the rules allow, particularly that rule that the goalkeeper can be, the game must stop while the goalkeeper receives treatment.
What's with all this hallelujah business, Tim?
It's gone completely out of hand in South America. That's the goalkeeper doing this.
Yeah, but there's no need for hallelujahs, though, is there? Just because,
well, no,
needs to be brought to a stop.
Well, I think this is
getting religious.
I'm with you. It's the way on it.
You're getting religious.
We're having a religious experience here.
It's also
someone agrees with me.
Yeah, when you hear messianic prophecy, then you are a little inclined.
Gosh, this man is on form tonight. Mark, you are on form.
We're having goalkeepers here going down with cramp. Goalkeepers with cramp. Just to waste time and to disturb the rhythm of the game. And it's got completely out of hand. And I agree with Mark all the way. Something has to be done about it.
Yeah, this is a question for Marcus. As you know, that many of us, not just gentlemen, but ladies as well, will be suffering withdrawal symptoms over the coming weeks as the Premier League comes to a close. Marcus asked, which players will be in focus during the transfer window? At least that'll keep us occupied until the beginning of the new season.
From an African perspective, can I start?
Yeah, please.
Oh, sorry, you broke up there, so I thought there was a bit of a gap in the discussion. Anyway, there's the big guy that everybody's talking about from an African perspective is this Atalanta midfielder, Italian-based African Ivorian international Frank Kessie, who's had the most magnificent season yet again in Serie A. And when you open the Gazzetta every morning or look at it online, in my case, he is the guy that they're all talking about. So they're talking Juventus, they're talking Real Madrid. It's a sort of a transfer on that scale. And I don't think he's the name that many people are aware of, but he's this real sort of he looks a little bit like Fellaini, but I think with a bit more polish, and a bit more of an engine box to box, and a real strength and power about him as he drives. It's maybe sort of a Fellaini in his running style, but without the languidness and a bit of the Yaya Toure about him as well. I think he looks a superb footballer.
What's he done this season that there's so much interest in him?
Nothing on a winning scale, but I mean just consistently performing in Serie A for a side, Atalanta. I think they finished. I stand under correction here, but I think they're either 5th or 6th. They finished above both the Milan clubs, and they've definitely qualified for the Europa League, if not just missed out on Champions League football, which for Atalanta is certainly I think qualifies as a magnificent season.
And Tim, from your side,
he's been the man.
And Tim, from your side.
There's one who's already right in the focus, who is a striker called Luan from Grêmio in Brazil, who there's a lot of press talk about Liverpool signing him up. And I know there's at least one agent wandering around England from club to club knocking on doors saying who will buy. He's a very, very interesting player. And if you remember Brazil's gold medal winning Olympic campaign, he's the fella who saved it. And he didn't play in the first 2 games where Brazil were absolutely dreadful and drew them both 0-0. One of them with Gleeson's lot. They couldn't even get a goal past Gleeson's lot. And then the 3rd game, Luan came into the side and changed the whole thing. What he is, and he's in Liverpool terms, I know that this perhaps isn't the greatest comparison for the point of view of Liverpool fans, he's less Neymar, he's more Nigel Clough. He's less of a kind of dribbler, kind of that kind of wonder kid thing, but he'll play off the main striker usually, knitting things together. He's more of a passer than a dribbler. He's got a lot of skill, scores goals, could score more. I think his finishing under pressure perhaps still needs some improvement. Very clever, lovely vision. He's got more physicality about him than Roberto Firmino, but he's a similar type of player in a way, making you wonder if the Liverpool interest is real. Can they fit both of them in the same side, or is this kind of preparation for perhaps Felipe Coutinho leaving them if this interest from Liverpool is genuine? But Luan of Grêmio is getting a lot of heat at the moment, and at the age of 24, I think he wants to go and the club, I think, realised that the time has come to cash in on him. He was linked with Leicester in the last transfer window, and I could never really see that one because he's not a striker you really imagine in a counter-attacking side, more of a possession side, and perhaps with the problems that Liverpool have had this year, beating the teams who are theoretically worse than them, someone who can pass and elaborate in the final third of the field, perhaps he does have something to add there.
Remember our number 08085 909 693 if you'd like to join in the conversation here on the World Football Phone In. We've got Simon in Australia with us. Good morning, Simon.
G'day, how you doing?
Very well, thanks so much. I should have said g'day. G'day.
I'm actually English, but I've lived here for 10 years, so I'm just picking up the lingo.
You're Aussie through and through, mate. We can hear that. And I suppose you go up at the end of your sentences, don't you?
Yeah, very true, yeah.
Well, never mind. Anyway, good to have you with us. Go ahead, you got a question for Tim?
Yeah, I've actually got two questions, if I can squeeze them in, please. The first one, I just want to ask Tim about Gabriel Barbosa's situation at Inter Milan. He doesn't really seem to be getting a lot of game time, and just wondering if he thinks he'll be there for the long term, and he's also been left out of the latest Brazil squad. So, are there any kind of concerns there for him? And the other one, I just wanted to ask him. I'm a big Flamengo fan, and I wanted to know about his thoughts for Flamengo's title challenge this year.
Well, first of all, can I just make you sad a little bit and talk about Flamengo's elimination from the Libertadores, which was one of the most astonishing things I've ever seen. Now, Flamengo are the Rio Giants. They've got a lot of money now, and they've put a lot of money into this club, and their absolute obsession is winning the Libertadores, South America's Champions League. They're obsessed with it. Their home games, full houses, and there's this giant mural they pull out with 1981 on it. That's when they won, with Zico inspiring the team. So that one end of the field had 1981, the other end had 2017. The implication being that they would win again in 2017. They got themselves knocked out in the group phase. Now, going into their last game, they had two things had to happen. They had to, in order for them to be eliminated, they had to lose. And in the other game in the group going on at the same time, their compatriots Atlético Paranaense had to win away to Universidad Católica of Chile. Going into the last 20 minutes, Flamengo were winning and Universidad Católica were winning. So everything was going right. At that point, it was absolutely impossible for Flamengo not to qualify. It just couldn't happen. It needed miracles. And then Flamengo conceded a goal, so it's 1-1. It's still all right because the draw is all right for them, and Católica are winning. Suddenly, Atletico scored 2 goals. So suddenly, Flamengo are then on the knife edge. If they concede, it's all over. But Católica equalised. Going into the last 5 minutes, it's 2-2. All right, Flamengo then are safe. Flamengo's captain is alleged to have said to the San Lorenzo striker, why don't we just leave it at this as a draw, and then we'll both be all right. And that's causing controversy at the moment. Atlético Paranaense score another goal. So Flamengo now, they can't concede. They mustn't concede, otherwise it'll be all over. And in the 92nd minute, they concede, all over for them. Unbelievable result, just unbelievable failure from a side with so rich in financial resources, which I think has personally, I think a lot to do with a captain and centre back who is so slow that he more or less has to defend on top of his goalkeeper. Obviously, the failure in the Libertadores adds massive pressure on them to win the Brazilian Championship. They, as I've said, they have financial resources and they now have a lot of motivation, and they don't have the Libertadores to worry about. So I certainly think they're in the running. Be interesting to see how the fans react now to this Libertadores elimination, because Flamengo have a mass support which can go with them, but it can also go against them. And the other question, when Brazil's new coach took over, Chichi, almost a year ago, who was going to play centre forward? It was a difficult decision. It wasn't clear, and there were two choices. It could be maybe Gabriel Jesus, or it could be Gabriel Barbosa, who just joining Inter Milan. And Chichi, all right, I'll go with Gabriel Jesus. But it was as he subsequently said, it was a difficult decision. Now, since then, the two of them have just been on different planets. You know, Gabriel Jesus just went bam for Brazil, and he was wonderful. He's knocking goals in all over the place, slotting in fantastically, going to Man City and hitting the ground running. Meanwhile, Gabriel Barbosa has gone to Inter, and it's been chaos. No, he hasn't done anything at all. I think it doesn't help that he's going to a club which is obviously in a very difficult time of transition, and the club are massively underperforming. But there's always been, ever since he got into the Santos team as a teenager, there's always been a thing around him that he's too big for his boots, and I don't think he's coped well with going to an environment when he is not the go-to star. I think that's been very, very hard for him. Now what happens now, I don't know. Whether Inter Milan will just cut their losses and move him on, and if they're not going to use him, surely they've got to loan him somewhere. He's got to get some game time. There is a lot of talent there, but I fear that there are some mental issues there that he has to address. And it's one thing to be a guaranteed first-team player for your club, as he was at Santos. It's another thing to go to Europe in a big squad when you're just one amongst 30, amongst 35. And he's had problems before. Brazil didn't take him, for example, to the World Under-20 Cup a couple of years ago, just because they thought he needed taking down. He was too big for his boots. Unless he sorts that problem out, I think he's consistently going to underperform.
Simon, good enough for you?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. Similar thoughts to myself. It's a shame to see Barbosa on that side. I mean, I love Brazilian football. In love with the culture, so I keep a keen interest on those sorts of things. So, yeah, really good answers. Thanks, Tim, for that, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, and also give my regards to Matilda, Simon.
And I'll put a snag on the barbecue too.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, and keep waltzing her. Keep waltzing her. Simon, look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks very much for now. Let's throw our thoughts to this one for you, if that's okay, Mark, from Carlin. I don't know. Are you aware of the feud between Bell and Nkono? I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, of Cameroon.
Yeah.
What was that feud, and are there any other interesting, notable examples of player feuds from either of your regions? What was Bell and Nkono's feud? What was that about?
Well, it was around selection and more importantly the #1 jersey during the 1990 World Cup, and it happened in the training camp which they had in the old Yugoslavia going into the tournament in Italy. Just as an aside, Cameroon probably hold the record as the most notoriously underprepared team going to any major tournament, and yet doing so well. That side, of course, they got to the quarterfinal and lost 3-2 to England in the last 8. Played just a handful of friendlies in Yugoslavia against club teams before going off to that tournament.
Well, was that Roger Miller's side? Was that?
Yeah, that's the Roger Miller tournament and all the other great heroes of that Lions side. But Nkono eventually kept goal. Bell went home, and they had an intense rivalry for the #1 jersey for, I would reckon, at least a decade before that. Much in the way that Clements and Shilton. For England, it alternated quite a lot.
But that wasn't a feud, was it, Clement and Shilton?
No,
it wasn't a feud.
But I'm using that as an example of the rivalry, of the regularity with which the jersey changed hands, and then the feud happened during the build-up to the World Cup, and Bell went home and Nkono kept goal during the World Cup.
And are there any other feuds like that from Africa out of interest, do you think? Or was that the most prominent?
That's definitely the most prominent on the continent. On the level of missing out on the World Cup, there's certainly no others of that kind of ilk.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be many on that side. What about in South America? Anything like that from you?
Well, there's a few. And how about Maradona and Passarella in the 1986 World Cup? And remember, Argentina won the World Cup in '78. Passarella was the great captain, and he was the dominant figure. You get to '86, Passarella is still there. He's still the captain until it's taken away from him and given to Maradona. who at that stage is a little bit unproven Maradona. He didn't quite live up to the expectation in '82. So that's a big decision from the coach there, Carlos Bilardo, to give the captaincy to Maradona. Passarella absolutely hated it. Passarella absolutely hated the way that Maradona and his gang would carry on. You know, he thought they were irresponsible, they were going out too much, and there was a real feud between them. Now Passarella, although he was there at that World Cup, he didn't actually play, didn't get onto the field, and the reason is that he suddenly had a kind of stomach crisis, and he lost like kilograms. You know, it was all coming out of all ends, I think. Well, Passarella's father has said on Argentine TV that they honestly think that he was poisoned. Oh, and that is a feud. No one does feuds in the lineup quite like the Argentines. You know, they honestly think that the two factions there, a Passarella faction and a Maradona faction. His father has said that they think that Passarella was poisoned to get him out of the team and get carte blanche for the Maradona gang to take over. Which well, it didn't end up too badly for Argentina, did it? They won the World Cup.
Yeah, not too bad. Of course, from my perspective, I suppose it's Freddie Ljungström of Arsenal. You know, he had that bust up with this other Swedish international. I can't remember his name, but the guy with the beard. You know the one I mean. Anyway, let's bring in, just to save my bacon, Gordon in Glasgow. Good morning.
Sorry, good morning, gentlemen. The first question was for Tim, and it was about Philippe Coutinho. Sorry about the pronunciation, Tim, but I'm not going to attempt it.
That's it. 10 out of 10, mate.
I was interested to see Jurgen Klopp using him as a deep-lying midfielder to thread the passes through. And I thought it was very similar to the way Pirlo did a bit from a much younger age. He seems to be as comfortable in a 6, 8 and 10 position. And I was wondering if that might help him if he was going to move to Barcelona. It's just I've never seen a player that young being so comfortable in 3 specialist positions. And if I could ask a supplementary question, it would be, as a Scotsman, Celtic have won the league so easily. If they had any examples of that in their regions, and if they thought it was healthy for the league in general.
That's a good question, actually.
For one team to be that far ahead of the other.
That is a good question. Can we start with that first, Tim, and then we'll come back to the Philippe Coutinho one. What about that from South America, first of all?
It doesn't tend to happen too much these days because there's a price paid for success here, which means your best players get sold off to Europe or China or the Middle East or something. And it has happened, say, in Uruguay, with only really 2 big teams in Uruguay, Nacional and Peñarol. So they tend to alternate, which is I think is a good kind of tie-in with Scotland. It's a little bit like that. But when you've only got one of them, when you've got one on top and the other down, as it is at the moment with Rangers still kind of restructuring or something. No, I don't think it's healthy for the league. And you remember how before, when things were more competitive generally in Scotland, Celtic and Rangers were competitive in Europe, which they no longer are. And quickly with Felipe Coutinho, very interesting that Brazil have called him up for the friendlies coming up in Australia, one against Argentina and one against Australia. And Brazil have more or less they're not picking any of their first team. Not taking any of their first team, with the exception of the 2 China-based midfielders, Gabriel Jesus, who's just coming back from injury and needs some games, and Felipe Coutinho. So I think there's a number of reasons that Coutinho is there, and one is that it's almost like a sop to the Australian public, because Neymar's not going, you got Coutinho instead. Another is that I think that Brazil's coach wants to see him in these different positions. At the moment, he plays wide right for Brazil, floating in. But can you use him in that central midfield position, that deeper lying position, because it's a position where Brazil are not particularly strong? So I think that's probably one reason that Coutinho is being included. So me too. I'm very interested to see if long term he can also play in that position.
And Mark, in Africa, are there any Celtics out there, teams that are runaway winners of the leagues? I mean, one team rather than 2.
Yeah, at the moment it's the very famous Mbabane Swallows from Swaziland, unbeaten and runaway winners, I think almost by 20 points in a fairly small league. And the reason why I mention them is that they also, they're from one of Africa's smallest countries, and they've also just got through into the group phase of the Confederation Cup, which is the equivalent of the Europa League. It's a magnificent achievement for a country that's very much a footballing backwater. And here in Southern Africa, everyone's incredibly excited about the progress of of this team. It's been around for a very long time with lots of domestic success, but made no impact in African football. I don't think, probably it's sort of the footballing equivalent of Luxembourg or Liechtenstein having a player, having a team in the Europa League, the group phase. So Mbabane Swallows is your example.
And Ulof Melberg was the other example that I was trying to remember. Anyway, 08085909693 if you'd like to join in the We'll phone in tonight. So we're talking football in Africa and South America and players from over there playing in our leagues with our Springbok Junior and our Legendino respectively. Let's get the latest 5 Live headlines now with Rob Watts.
On digital, online, smartphone and tablet, this is BBC 5 Live.
Thank you, Dalton. There are reports in the US that Donald Trump told Russian officials the former FBI chief James Comey was a real nut job. The New York Times also says the president claimed sacking Mr. Comey relieved great pressure on himself. As of this morning, all cigarettes will be sold in unbranded packets with graphic health warnings on. By the end of the weekend, packs of 10 will no longer be available, and tobacco will only be sold in pouches of 30 grams or more. Reports suggest as many as 140 people were killed in an attack on a Libyan airbase. It was originally thought 60 died when militants allied to the government tried to take over the facility on Thursday. And polling has ended in Iran's presidential elections, having been extended 3 times. Turnout was unexpectedly high. The Interior Ministry says more than 40 million people voted. Now the sport with Helen Smith.
The former Arsenal striker Ian Wright has welcomed a potential takeover at the Emirates. Shareholder Alisher Usmanov has made a £1 billion bid to buy Stan Kroenke's controlling stake in the club, but Kroenke has so far shown no interest, meaning the bid has in effect been rejected. Ian Wright has told 5 Live that a takeover could be the change that the club needs.
Something's got to happen simply because we're going to start to miss out, or we're already missing out on the so-called managers that we may be interested in, and we're going to start missing out on the so-called players that want to come to England and want to come to play in the Premier League. This has got to happen at some stage. Something has got to happen for Arsenal to go to that next level.
Dundee United came from behind to beat Falkirk 2-1 in the second leg of their Scottish Premiership playoff semi-final. They go through to the final 4-3 on aggregate. Paul Dixon put United ahead in the 87th minute.
Buzzing, absolutely buzzing. Coming from behind at Falkirk's place. We've not done great this season here, so what a feeling to get into the final with a comeback like that.
They'll now face either Hamilton or Inverness for a place in the Scottish Premiership. England's under-17s have lost to Spain in a penalty shootout in the European Championship final. England were leading 2-1 until Spain equalised in injury time to force the match to penalties. Maria Sharapova will enter Wimbledon qualifying rather than request a wildcard. The Russian was denied a wildcard for the French Open, with tournament officials saying her doping suspension counted against her. Here's our tennis correspondent Russell Fuller.
I always felt it was unlikely that Sharapova would receive a wildcard from the All England club for Wimbledon, and the decision made by the French Open earlier this week not to invite her to Roland Garros made that all but a foregone conclusion. So I think this is a sensible move by Sharapova. It's a battle she has tried to win, but ultimately accepted that it's one she cannot win.
Rafa Nadal, meanwhile, has been knocked out of the Rome Masters. He was beaten in straight sets by Dominic Thiem, while rain has caused the quarter-final match between Novak Djokovic and Juan Martin Del Potro to be suspended. Djokovic was 1 set up but trailed 2-1 in the second set. World number 2 Rory McIlroy has withdrawn from next week's PGA Championship event at Wentworth. He's still struggling with an ongoing injury to his ribs. Scarlets have beaten Leinster 27-15 in the Pro 12 semi-final, despite having winger Stephen Evans sent off before half-time. There's their head coach Wayne Pivac.
Well, it's got to be our greatest performance, just before half-time when we lost Steph to the high tackle, or the tip tackle. We had to dig deep, and we talked about it at half-time. This is what we've been building for all season. The unity, the spirit on the side, it was going to be really tested, and what a second half. We were riding every play, every minute, and we didn't get everything perfectly right, but I'll tell you what, we got the end result, which is what we're after, which is just a fantastic result for these boys.
And South Africa have won the opening match of their tour of England. They beat Sussex by 66 runs as the one-day match was reduced to 32 overs due to rain.
The best live sport.
Manchester United have reached the final of the Europa League.
Rashford is in a deep line position, kills it. Fellaini with a header. It's in! Manchester United score!
On Wednesday night, join 5 Live Sport live from Stockholm as United attempt to secure their second trophy of the season and qualify for next year's Champions League.
And the final whistle goes, and Manchester United have done it.
Manchester United versus Ajax in the Europa League final.
Wednesday night from 6:30. This is your football station. This is 5 Live. This is BBC 5 Live, available on the BBC iPlayer radio app. Up all night with Dotun Adebayo.
Yeah, well, football phone-in this morning is on Africa and South America. Football from over there and players from over there playing in our leagues. We've got the Legendino over in Rio, and we have got our Springbokker Junior in Cape Town. Any thoughts, please? Do give us a call on 0808 5909 693. Test their wisdom, or their humour as the case may be. Talking of jokes, you might remember a couple of weeks back, one of our listeners, Søren, was emailed us, I think it was last week actually, emailed us to say that he was on his way to Argentina, and yeah, exactly, and he was going to go and catch in the Boca River Plate experience, as it were, and Tim demanded a report. That's what he says here. Yeah, demanded a report.
Yeah, it's true.
It's very true. That's what he says here on this very long email. When I say long, I think this holds the record for length of emails I've ever received. So I'm not going to read the whole thing out. You know, you can go and check out his grammar later on your own, Tim. I'll come on to that in a moment, because here with us we have one of our own, as you were saying. When you talk about one of our own in the first half hour of this phoning, what did you mean, Tim?
Well, 'cause I've long had the idea that in order to be called Mitchell, you either had to drum for Jimi Hendrix,
of course,
you had to play cricket for Australia.
Yeah.
But apparently this isn't true, because there's someone with this name who has this tonight makes his debut working on the World Football Phone-In. Has been a listener for years and years and years and years. So he's one of our own. We've groomed him. We have made him. We have made Mitchell Mansfield what he is today. And now we have to accept the consequences.
I thought you were one of the Mitchell brothers. When he was saying Mitchell like that, Mitchell, I thought you were one of the Mitchell brothers, because he said, you know, you had to be a cricketer, or you had to be this and that. I was going to throw in EastEnders as well. But anyway, good morning to you, Mitch. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Dustin. I previously said that only my mum can call me Mitchell, but I think I might just make an exception for the Legendino.
I know, I wouldn't dare call you Mitchell, you know me. I'm calling you Mitch, as it were. So hang on a second, you've been listening to the phone-in for 5 years, and you haven't missed a single one.
That is true. Started listening towards the end of 2012. It was the reason I fell in love with radio. It was the reason why I decided I wanted to be a journalist, and it's the reason I'm here now.
And it's the reason we're going to give you a test. Now, gentlemen, he says he's been listening for the last 5 years, so I'd appreciate...
Oh, you just found someone to bully, haven't you? Oh, God.
What? The man says he's been listening for 5 years. We have to test him, don't we? Okay, and feel free to join in, gentlemen. Make sure that your questions don't go beyond 5 years, because that would be unfair, because he only started listening to World Football Phone-In when he started shaving. So no unshaven questions, please. So Mitch, let's start off with what is the name of the World Football Phone-In's Brazilian shirt holder who created the sub-question? What's his birth name? Only the first name will do. You don't have to give me his surname or his middle name, just his Christian name.
You're talking about Subbuteo?
Yeah, I'm talking about Subbuteo.
Oh goodness, but you want his real name?
Yeah,
we don't deal in real names.
Of course we do.
On the World Football Phone-In.
You've been listening for 5 years. 5 years I've said, next up is, and then I've said, in other words, Subbuteo.
Look, I've given you his Brazilian shirt name. That's got to do the job. That's proof enough, surely.
Yeah. Go on, Tim. You got one for him?
No, he's one of our own. He doesn't need one. I think he should be. He should be asking the questions.
He's not one of our own. He's not one of our own just yet.
We don't test listeners. We don't subject them to ritual medieval torture.
Okay. Let's go back 5 years now, and just about 5 years. Although this stretches back the last 15 years, as I recall. But let's just limit it to the last 5 years. How long did the big wheel say that you had to have been contributing to the World Football Phone-In before you deserved to earn a Brazilian shirt name? Basically, this came up when one listener said, after his first contribution, can I have a Brazilian shirt name? And we said yes, and then the big wheel came in and said, hey, hang on a second, how comes he gets to have a Brazilian shirt name after only one contribution, whereas it took me how long? How long did Sean Wheelock say it took him to earn a Brazilian shirt? And therefore, that became the margin to which every listener had to try and attain.
I remember the controversy well. Sean Wheelock.
Yeah.
Where is he now?
Yeah.
I'm going to say...
Commentating on mixed martial arts. That's where he is now. Earning a lot more money than you or I, okay? Now that you've asked. But anyway, go on.
I tell you what, I'm going to say that Sean Wheelock said 2 years. I'm going to suggest...
That's not bad, actually.
I'm going to suggest almost 5 years. Yeah? How about it?
That is not bad. It was actually 9 months, I think, but that's not bad. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. Mark, do you have any questions for this youngster?
Yeah, what was Wheelock's club?
That's a good question.
Oh, that is a very good question. See, the thing is, I was arriving just as the big wheel was leaving. I'm not sure if it's a coincidence.
But which city in the United States, or if you like, which state in the United States did he always commentate from?
I failed you.
Dorothy.
Okay.
I failed you.
You failed me.
In fairness, it was just last week you were getting John Arnold's locations confused, so we can all do it.
Yeah, we can all do it. But let me give you a clue. I'm going to Kansas City. Kansas City.
That's giving him the answer.
No, I'm not giving him the answer. I'm just singing a song. Come on, Mark. Would I give him the answer? I'm just singing a song. He could get it wrong.
Was it Kansas, was it?
Yes, he got it right. Well done. This guy's been listening for 5 years, and now he gets a job on Off All Night. That's what you have to do to get a job on Off All Night, you see. Listen to the World Football Phone for 5 years. How have the first 5 years been? Because we're beginning another 5 years now. How have the first 5 years been for you?
The first 5 years have been life-changing. I really do mean that, Dotton. I really do mean that.
I know you do.
The World Football Phone-In was my gateway, really, into radio. You know, it opened up a whole new world for me, but I haven't stopped listening. I used to listen live when I was studying in Hong Kong. That's when I started.
Wow.
I must confess, I haven't actually listened live since.
Doesn't matter. You have to listen
on the
live.
podcast.
Yeah, podcast is
every
cool.
week.
That's still listening to the program, isn't it? And seeing this was the gateway to your profession in journalism. How many times have I corrected your journalism tonight already? I mean, doing it in a friendly, uncle kind of way. How many times, how many corrections have I had to say? How many suggestions have I said to you tonight to improve your journalism? How many tips have I given you? You're learning from the master. How many tips have I given you in that respect?
So far, I've made 2 notes from you, Dotton. I can sense the third coming on soon.
Yeah, very soon, very soon.
How many of those 2 notes are, it's time to go and get the biscuits?
I did actually contemplate bringing some biscuits with me this evening, but I didn't want to cause offence.
That's the third note. Now go out and get some biscuits, for goodness sake, before I die in here. That's the third note for you see. No, Mitch, it's great to have you on board.
See,
it's a pleasure to meet you.
I expect people told him, when he turned up, I expect people told him, you're just going to be making the tea for Dot. Dot was saying, no,
it doesn't work like that. No. Tim, it doesn't work
coffee.
Like that. It doesn't work like that, you know that. I wish I had that kind of power. No, it's great to have Mitch with us, and we'll find out over the course of the next few weeks whether he's living up to he wants a Brazilian shirt name. I've already told him it's going to take 9 months. Anyway.
Dotton, seeing as this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I can't quickly ask the Legendino a question.
Go on then.
Is that okay?
What about Mark? You're going to leave Mark out of this as well then, are you?
Oh, well,
what kind of journalism is that?
I've got a question for Mark as well.
Yes, mate. Yeah.
But I don't want to go straight in for a sub question.
Well, you've done it now. Remember,
I've already failed to get Sabutio's name.
Oh, just like
exactly.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Can I ask Tim a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tim, a brand new exhibition has just opened at the National Football Museum down the road from us here in Salford, dedicated to Pelé. Art, Life, Football is the name of the museum, and one of the things that really strikes you about the museum is his profound connection to Santos. He clearly loved Santos and the club loved him, which I think we sometimes fail to appreciate, certainly here, because we think of Pelé in, of course, the yellow and green and blue. My question is, have Santos failed to capitalise on that and make themselves one of the really big names in international football since? Have they failed to really capitalise on the power of the brand of Pelé and that relationship that they could have really done a lot with?
Perhaps, and you have to remember that this comes from a time when players couldn't move as they wanted to. And Pelé was, I think even the government declared him untransferable. And he was kind of stuck there a little bit, although there's no doubt his love for the club. They then had to pay him, which involved Santos becoming the Harlem Globetrotters of football, and they gave up playing the Copa Libertadores, South America's Champions League, in the mid-60s, just to go around and play friendlies, because they needed that. They needed that revenue to pay him and a very, very good supporting cast. When I first moved over to Brazil in '94, I had the idea that Santos were the biggest club, exactly because of that. And it came as quite a shock to me to realise, I've made this comparison before, which was has deeply offended Santos supporters, and that really isn't the objective. But they're a little bit like Brighton, in that, and Santos is a port city, about an hour's journey away from Sao Paulo. Now, Sao Paulo is a metropolis, 20 million. Santos, the population is much, much smaller. So the fact that Santos have historically been able to outperform Corinthians, who are the biggest club from Sao Paulo, is like Brighton being able to outperform Arsenal. It's an immense achievement from Santos to be able to do this. But obviously, after the Pelé era, they then slumped back a little bit to being a kind of mid-table side with a glorious history. What they've done in recent years that have got them right back on the map is to have a fantastic youth policy, and they have they've probably had the best youth policy in terms of producing stars of any club in Brazil over the last 10-15 years. On first it was Diego and Robinho. Robinho obviously ended up at Man City, and they won the championship that year with a team that didn't have anyone older than 27. Remarkable achievement, and almost all of them were home produced, and subsequently that they've produced further generations, and Neymar is obviously the best. We just talked about Gabriel Barbosa, who hasn't come off at Inter Milan, but he's another one. So that they're still really, I think, punching above their weight, given the fact that the stadium in Santos, it fits less than 20,000, and they have trouble filling it, and sometimes they go into the city of Sao Paulo, an hour away, to stage games there. And because of their success in the Pelé era, they have a big support base in Sao Paulo as well. I was there for their game 2 weeks ago, when they played in the Libertadores in Sao Paulo. I was there for that one. But given the fact that their catchment area is really quite small in comparison to these giants of Sao Paulo, I think that they're still punching above their weight. Now, internationally in general, Brazilian football performs badly. Brazilian football should do much, much better. They should work the international development of the game. It's difficult with a calendar which is the calendar of Brazilian football looks inwards, with these state championships, one for each of the 27 states, which make no sense to an international audience whatsoever. So while Brazilian football in general performs badly internationally, it's difficult for Santos to extrapolate that. That they probably could do more marketing internationally on their past with Pelé, but I think in general that they're still outperforming. I really think it's a remarkable club, Santos, given the size, because this was the big shock to me when I came over, to find out that in comparison with Corinthians, they're really not particularly big in terms of fan base and structure, but they continue to be a mouse that roars, and they become a lion as well. They transform themselves into a lion. I think it's a great club, but it's not. But by nature, it's not a giant one.
Okay, you got a question for Mark?
I do actually.
The only reason I'm warning you about this is we've got a few questions for you as well from listeners now.
Oh, goodness.
So make sure it's a good one from Mark, and make sure he can speak for the length of time that Tim spoke for. You might get away with this before 3 o'clock.
Well, Tim, firstly, thanks for a great answer. And it's funny you should make that comparison with Brighton. That's actually just where I've come from, covering the club.
You're
for
not allowed
BBC
to waffle.
Sussex.
You're not allowed to waffle. Mark is. You're not allowed to waffle. What's your question for Mark?
OK, here we go. For Mark. And I suppose Tim can chip in as well if we're
Stop
sure.
waffling! Come on!
I thought you were trying to teach me something, Dodson.
Just ask Mark the question.
Right, here we go.
I'll come to yours.
Mark, I'm sure you will have seen, outside of your region, but let's see where it takes us, that in France this evening, 6 clubs who are in contention for the title in the final round of fixtures this evening. I've been working so hard on our stories, I haven't actually checked to see who won. But can you, Mark, remember a situation in the leagues in your region where so many clubs were within a chance of winning the league on the final day?
And just on that question as well, Mark, John is kind of on that question. John has texted us saying, I know it's not entirely in your region, but to what extent have you managed to cover the end of the French league? Because there are bound to be many Africans involved, and he'd like you to talk about that as well, if you can.
I know that the South African. Well, first of all, I don't know. I don't think there's ever been a sort of 6 or 7 team pile up at the top of the table in Africa going into the final round of a championship, and one of 7 potential winners emerging as the champion. And I do know that the South African striker, the brilliantly named South African striker Kermit Erasmus, scored last night. He plays for Lens in the French league. He's actually on loan from Rennes, one of the top league clubs. And I think his side were on course to qualify until the very last minute when one of the other teams won. I think it was Amiens, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And so Lens finished Lens finished 4th, and therefore didn't make it. But I think the big success story of League 2 this year has been Strasbourg, who, and again I stand under correction, go bouncing up again for the 2nd successive year, and their African presence is fairly limited, which is unusual for League 2 because there's quite a lot of, there's probably on average 3 or 4 Africans per club in a very extensive league. But Strasbourg got a couple of Senegalese players, but not particularly regular in the side, and not many else, which is, as I say, unusual for that league.
Let me throw some questions at you, Mitch. Let's start off with this one. It's quite a good one, actually. From Max, for the past 5 years, who was the ice hockey commentator for 5 Live who used to read the sports news and contribute to the World Football Podium as well? And apparently he can also give Dotton, whoever he is, a few pounds in weight. Not sure.
This is set.
Yeah, well, not bad. Not bad.
We miss him.
Yeah. Of course we miss him. And this other one.
Where's he gone? Because I think I saw the Nations Cup not too long ago.
That's right. He's still around. He was covering the ice hockey, some tournament for them.
Lovely guy.
In Belfast, yeah, absolutely.
Well, he's still doing BBC.
Yeah, he's still here. It's just he doesn't do nights anymore. Mitch does nights instead, you see. Mitch pulled the short straw. A question from Mitch, from Jill. Can Dawson sing?
Can Dotton sing? Well, I've got to say, I was a little bit disappointed with the lack of dancing and singing for the soccer fan at the start of the show.
Right, hang on a second. I was setting up other things. I know, I was setting up other things. What, were you dancing then, Vickery? Were you dancing, Vickery?
Well, I've got to stay with my wife on leave, so that limits my mobility a little bit. But so I was kind of chair dancing, moving my arms around.
What shirt have I got on, Mitch?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It's a hooky one that I got from Tim Vickery.
Well, it can't be that bad if it's hooky, because that's a few years old.
I know. It's fraying at the edges.
Some good,
fraying at the edges. Yeah.
My mind's well done for being able to fit in it. You've done well.
American Explorer. Explorer from Portugal.
Oh, Vascos.
Well done.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, you've got all the questions right so far. I think you might have some work to do out there as well, by the way.
I think I best get on.
It's not just putting your feet up on the World Football Podium. Lots of hard work. No, Mitch, it's great having you on board, and we'll speak some more. Look forward to it. So this one, and this is a good one from KA, with the last 2 World Cups coming from your regions, gentlemen, what, if any, legacy has there been? South Africa first.
Well, obviously hosting the tournament and all the wonderful stadiums, and I've rabbited on about this before, but I mean, it's been a massive impact in this country, the infrastructure, and you know, a lot of the criticism I think that people had initially about a World Cup coming to Africa was a misuse of money that perhaps could be used elsewhere. And I suppose you could continue to argue that the cost of that football tournament and what that money might have done socially for hospitals, etc. I suppose that is an argument that's always going to hold any tournament anywhere. But the legacy for football in South Africa on the back of those stadiums has been immense. The professional league has grown in leaps and bounds. The football is so much better, and there's been a wonderful job done by municipal authorities and by private companies who've got the contracts for some of the stadiums to keep them sort of financially viable, to keep up the standards, to keep the pitches in the quality that they were during the 2010 World Cup, and really left a massive mark on football here in South Africa.
I suppose the legacy of the World Cup in Brazil is 3 presidents and former presidents all under suspicion of criminal activity, I suppose. 3 in a row. Boom, boom, boom.
It's part of it, really. You know, I mean, that kind of social protest movement that started the year before the World Cup, during the Confederations Cup, that it was, you were watching a country changing in front of your eyes, perhaps in terms of tolerance of corruption. But I'm always fascinated to hear Mark talk about this and how the thing, certainly in his esteemed opinion, has been worthwhile, thoroughly worthwhile in South Africa, and the stadiums have been well cared for. Even if average crowds aren't particularly high, but then again, I think, as he explains, average crowds have never been particularly high in South Africa. Over here, the story is nothing like as positive. There are some good stadiums there. The vast majority, though, are underused, expensive. Where private enterprises got involved, it's trying to get out. It's struggled to make money out of it, because it ain't just the stadium, it's the context in which the stadium operates. And Brazilian football now has some 21st century stadiums and a 19th century calendar. And I think that the big lesson is that it seems to me that the political class in South Africa seems to be more competent than the political class in Brazil, which also has to do with the point that you made about presidents and so on. That seems to me to be the big difference. The people running things in South Africa